How to write an ethics paper.
Dad, look at my flint.
That's very nice. Very good, flint.
I found a lot of flint, but it fell down.
All right, very good. Number 1, read the instructions. Your professor has given you some specifics on what they expect in your ethics paper. Please read those specifics and satisfy those specifics, as well as any rubric they may have provided. That's actually number 5, but I'll go ahead and mention that. But what if they've asked you to do? If they've said, answer this particular prompt, begin your paper with an opening thesis statement, engage or summarize these particular arguments, make sure you do exactly what the professor has said. Maybe they've said, articulate and respond to an objection. Whatever those specifics are, please read the instructions. Don't assume that you understand what the paper assignment is. Number 2, download your ideas. I had a professor once that said, Matt, I never understand what I really think about an issue until I've tried to write about it. And what he meant by that was he had to get his ideas out of his mind and onto a page or into a computer where he could analyze them, reorganize them, revise them, reformulate them, until he could craft them into something that he could rationally endorse. And I'm sure you have lots of views in your head, lots of arguments that are not fully articulated, but for the purposes of a philosophy class and writing an ethics paper, you want to get those into a format that is very polished and has very tight logic. You're not going to be able to do that simply reworking them up here, so go ahead and download those ideas, get them out of your head so you can revise them and make them much better. Number 3, make an argument. Make an actual argument. Arguments are simply collections of premises intended to logically support a conclusion. You're going to have reasons that support whatever your view is. Sometimes students will articulate a personal belief they have, or they'll have a very elaborate opinion, but it won't be a logically coherent argument with reasons that logically support their conclusion. Long-winded opinion elaborations are fine for many classes, but for an ethics class taught by a philosophy instructor, they're going to expect an actual argument, so please look into that and offer one. Number 4, respond to an objection. That's probably going to be in the specific, explicit directions from your professor, but even if it's not, go ahead and think after you have crafted your argument, you've revised your argument, think what a smart person might say against your argument, and then proactively respond to that criticism. This shows your professor that you've carefully thought about your view. You've not just simply slapped something together and handed it to them. Instead, you have formulated draft ideas, hypotheses, and you've tested them against your own criticisms. Use your own logic to determine whether or not they actually pass muster or not. So articulate not a crummy objection that a moron would offer, but a good, reasonable objection that a smart person might offer, and then respond to it. If you come up with an objection that you can't respond to, that's not reason to suppress it or ignore it or dismiss it or try to hide it. Instead, that's good reason to revise your view, to go back and take into account that objection and make a view that can actually incorporate it somehow. Number 5, satisfy the rubric. I mentioned this a second ago, very similar to follow the instructions. If your professor provides a specific scoring rubric, if they say you'll get this many points for doing this sort of a submission will receive this sort of a grade, go through that. If you want to get a C or a D, follow the format of the C or the D in the rubric. If you want to get an A or a B, follow that format. Use it as a way to double check what you're doing, both on the front end and also before you click submit, if you want to get a good grade. Number 6, revise. This actually should happen throughout the process. As writing coach William Zinser says, good writing is rewriting. The chances that you're going to be able to spit out your best paper the first time through are almost zero. That's because, similar to the download your ideas point, the argument that you're capable of making is unlikely just to be crystallized in your mind and able to just fall out onto the page. Instead, you're going to get some stuff out, you're going to go ahead and perhaps free write, you're going to do your best, and then you're going to go back and reorganize things. You're going to take these premises and put them over here, this point actually goes over there. You might think upon reflection that this entire section really doesn't support anything, and you may be tempted to retain it. You may think, man, I put forth all this time and this effort, and the writing's really good here, and I'm supposed to write 6 pages, and this makes up an entire page and a half. Cut it. Cut that nonsense out. If it's not any good, that's what editing is all about. Sometimes it'll break your heart, but let go of those paragraphs and those sections that don't really contribute to the quality of paper that you're capable of turning in. Number 7, engage the experts. That's probably going to be included in the instructions for you to summarize articles that have been assigned. It's probably going to be reiterated in the rubric, but even if it is not, do not sit down and attempt to solve some difficult ethical issue simply based on whatever view you came to the class holding initially. There is an actual class assigned, Ethics is something that people seriously study. There is a body of literature for a reason. If you're going to write a paper for a biology class, you wouldn't just sit down and try to figure out how the innards of humans work using your own views and biases and things that you happen to pick up along the way during grade school. No, you would go look at the course text and you would read articles by professionals who had studied these things. You would consult with various documents. Do the same thing when you're writing your ethics paper. Please don't jump in and try to figure this stuff out on your own. Maybe it's the case that your fresh perspective allows you to see things that the so-called experts have neglected, that they've completely suppressed, and they're just blinded by their own, I don't know. But even if that's the case, first show that you have engaged and considered those views and that you understand the philosophical landscape so that your professor will take your view seriously and not worry that after they've read the first 5 pages, they're going to find that, oh, they didn't even consider the thing that I assigned on the first day. And if they had, they would see that this argument is terrible. So engage those experts. And last, be willing to grow. Sometimes I'll get ethics students whose entire goal throughout the class is to make sure their mind doesn't change whatsoever. If that's the perspective you want to bring to an ethics class, I suppose that's okay, but the professor's not there to brainwash you in a particular direction. They're not there to corrupt you. They're there to enlighten you, to help you understand these issues better. Whatever view you ultimately take from the class, that's up to you, but at least in principle, be willing to grow not only from the class, but also from the experience of writing an ethics paper. Here's some things to avoid turning in. You don't want to turn in the look what I found on the internet and did not place within quote marks. Don't be the person that turns in that paper. It's good if you go do outside research, but anything verbatim, put it within quote marks. Please cite your sources. If your paper is written on a 7th grade level for the first 5 paragraphs and all of a sudden it jumps to this postgraduate level and it drops back down to a 7th grade level, that's kind of a red flag. And all you got to do is copy a few words, put them in Google, and bam. So ask your professor for help if you want help. Don't do that. Don't turn in the everyone who disagrees with me is obviously stupid paper. You may have the best view. We hope you're going to offer a really good view, but please don't be dismissive of others in an insulting, undisciplined, unprofessional, disrespectful way. It's just not the way philosophy is done. Maybe everybody else is an idiot, but don't call them an outright idiot. Carefully and respectfully explain why your view is superior. And won't respect that. It's hard to respect a paper that says everybody else is stupid. The in my own opinion / or AKA in my personal view, also known as I strongly feel paper. Point number 3, make an argument. Articulating your strong opinion is not making an argument. Telling us what you feel is not making an argument. So remove that in my opinion stuff, because that's going to present what may be a very good argument as a simple opinion. Opinion is a view without supporting reasons. We want supporting reasons all the way through. So don't say in my opinion, and don't just elaborate your personal view or your feelings. That's not a good thing. And also don't turn in the I didn't read a darn thing in your class paper, or the I didn't care enough to edit / proof / correctly format / meet the length requirements / etc. paper. Those things are easy to fix. Don't turn that in. And last, here's some bonus points. William Zinzer's 4 Principles of Good Writing: clarity, brevity, simplicity, and humanity. Whatever you convey in your writing, reread it and rewrite it to make sure that there's no confusion about exactly what it is you're trying to convey. Brevity, don't spend an entire page elaborating on a point that you could have made in a sentence. If you've made it clearly, move on. Make your paper rich with content and meaning, not a bunch of fluffy fluff. 3, simplicity. Don't use fancy, difficult, unnecessarily pretentious terminology and language when you can convey things in a clear, simple way. As Zinzer says, easy reading is the product of hard writing, and hard writing is the product of thinking very carefully about how you can best convey your points to your audience And in most cases, you're not going to be able to best convey your points to your audience clearly if you're using hyperinflated, difficult, overcomplicated, unnecessarily complicated language. So simplicity, just convey it as you would to an intelligent peer. Don't try to write as the philosophers wrote. My goodness, in many cases they're so unnecessarily complicated. Please don't try to mimic that. Try to find your voice, which leads us to point number 4, humanity. And what that means is write your paper in your voice. Don't try to mimic Kant. Don't try to mimic me. Don't try to mimic what you think your professor wants. Don't try to adopt what you think is a scholarly tone. Instead, just write a serious, professional, but in your own words, using your own style paper. There you go, how to write an ethics paper with some wonderful visual aids and a few gnats here in the lovely East Tennessee woods. Hope this is helpful.